Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of IDTALK4ED Live, the show for the unsung heroes of education. I'm your host, Sarfo-Mensah. If this is your first time tuning in or viewing this podcast, I welcome you and I hope that you return for future episodes and new content. And if you're a returning viewer or listener of the podcast, I welcome you back and I hope that today's episode is one that you find informative, enlightening, and of course, insightful. But before we get into the main event, I ask for those who are on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, show your boy some love, and if you have in your heart to donate to this platform that continues to grow, we accept Cash App and Venmo. For the Cash App, we have $ IDTALK4ED. If you use Venmo, you can send your donation to at Kwame SM, KWAMESM. All right. And then, of course, for those who are listening through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other streaming platforms, make sure you subscribe to the podcast from there as well. All right. Thank you kindly. And, we are approaching the end of another year, and we've been blessed to have a lot of incredible, bright minds come through here to share their expertise, share their stories, share their knowledge with all of us. And today we're going to continue that streak with another insightful and just incredible guest. She is someone who I've developed a pretty strong bond with through social media, and I think that's the case now, given COVID-19 and everything going on. It's like your closest friends are now miles away from you, and you don't even realize it. But she is someone who is an equity champion. She is a mentor. She is an advocate. She is somebody who is all about radical self-love, all about liberation, all about all the things that we preach about on this podcast. And I'm just excited to finally have her on the podcast. She is someone who I've been wanting to have on for a minute, and I'm just glad that the timing was right to finally have this conversation happen tonight. So without further ado, I want to bring on a good friend of the podcast, Dr. Melanie Dukes, to share her story today. And she's going to talk to us about her book and everything else going on in life. So let's do it. Let's bring her on. Hey, hey.
Hey there. Oh, I loved your introduction. It was so sweet. Thank you, Kwame. I feel the same way. And it's an honor to actually be here with you because when you reached out, I was like, oh my gosh, I've been wanting to be on your show. So this was awesome that you even reached out and thought of me. I am honored. I'm honored.
Yes. And I just appreciate all the support you've given just towards this podcast, just towards anything related to identity talk. The gratitude is, there's really enough words to express my gratitude for just how you continue to uplift and amplify the work that we do here on Identity Talk. It definitely isn't going unnoticed. So I just want to make sure I name that.
Well, that's my love, my passion is to uplift our people, and our people mean people also who are in this work of liberating and freedom and liberation of self and others. So you're doing the work. I'm just there to give you your flowers while you're here. So it's wonderful.
All right. And you're doing the work as well. This is not a night where you're going to be humble about that. Although we appreciate humility on this platform, this is a platform where we give flowers to those who are doing the work, and you've been doing the work for a very, very long time, which is why you are here. And we want to make sure that we highlight your story and everything that's going on. But before we even get into all that, I know that you just came back home from vacation.
Yes.
You were in Belize for some time, and
Yes.
you had the grandest time.
I did.
from all the videos and everything.
I
So
did. I
yeah,
did.
talk to us about just spending time with and
Sure.
beliefs and connecting with family out there.
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's this whole, and we'll get in a little bit about it, but I was very intentional. My father's 81, my mom is 71, and my kids had never been to Belize. And it was so important. And as you know, my kids are 19. I have a 16-year-old, I have a stepson who's 8 years old. And so I wanted them all to experience what I experienced, a little bit of what I experienced going and visiting. And so going to Belize was very important, and connecting and making those connections was very important for me, to reconnect, and for them to see where their Baba, they call him Baba, grew up. So visiting and touring, all his childhood spots, and actually him taking to the locations of the childhood stories he would tell of all mischievous things that he would do growing up, and the homes, and just them seeing how their father, their grandfather grew up, and it was in poverty, and so for them to just really appreciate what they have. My father always speaks of times of not necessarily having enough to eat. He grew up being raised by his mother and his grandmother and his aunt, so it was a house full of women, and his sister and his brother, but just having that sense of love and passion for his culture. And I wanted my kids to see that. And it was very important for me, very important. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think your story and mine has parallels because I actually lived in Ghana. So both my parents
Oh,
are
yeah.
from Ghana. And I actually lived there for 3 years during my teenage years.
Oh,
And
that's
it was my
amazing.
first time living there or being there since I was really young and couldn't really remember what Ghana was like.
Yeah, yeah.
And what's crazy is it was during those 3 years where I really started to learn about my culture. I really started to take pride in who
Mm.
I was. And
Mhm.
initially, when you're 12 years old, you're thinking about leaving friends behind, friends
Oh,
you
yeah.
grew up with in your
Oh,
old
yes.
neighborhood, and you're
Yes.
just you're just really
Right.
thinking about video games and all these other things that we're
Right.
so fortunate to have here in
Yes,
America. And then you go to Ghana where life is very different. Electricity isn't on every day.
completely.
Um, Electricity is being generated by a water dam.
Right.
And if the
Right.
dam's not flowing, the electricity isn't going, right?
Facts. Facts. So that is so true. So, like, what's so interesting is, so I grew up 15 years outside of the United States. So my first 15 years, my dad worked for the United Nations. So I lived outside and didn't come back to the States until I was 15, going on 16. And so hearing your story too, um, my life was like that, where, water wasn't always there, turning on water, you'd have maybe a well outside, or a tank really, and you'd go get the water. Electricity in Sierra Leone, lived in Sierra Leone for about 3.5 years. It was Angola, Sierra Leone, and Angola, 9 years in the continent of Africa, but then in the Caribbean. But that whole water, electricity, having a generator, growing up in that space. But then I also recognized my privilege too, because I had access
Hmm.
than anyone else. I mean, I had a generator, I had people were there to help. It was just a part of living, but I recognize the privilege in that too. Um, Even
Yeah.
though we weren't a part of the American embassy, and I really didn't claim myself as American, because being in the UN, it was better to just be with the UN than being from an American embassy, because I tell you, our people, our Black and white folks, we it was interesting in how they weren't really able to adapt all the time to those spaces. So I really
Mm.
appreciated being within the United Nations, that family and that group as well. Yeah. So,
Wow. So my wife works with the Peace Corps,
yes.
but we do have friends in the United Nations. And I could tell you this, like all the things that you're saying are 100% true. I feel like when you just stay connected with the US Embassy, you kind of find yourself in this bubble
Yeah.
because a lot of folks within that bubble, they don't want to integrate and assimilate. into the
Yes.
culture of the host country. They just want to kind of keep to themselves and
Yes.
try to maintain a life that's very similar to the one they left in the
That's
States,
exactly right.
which is ironic because when you are a diplomat, expat, or you're just working in foreign service in some
Right.
capacity, it really should be about learning about the countries you're in and trying
Hello.
to immerse yourself into those cultures. But
Absolutely.
at least in this current experience that I've had, um, most of the Americans in the embassy are very much adamant about maintaining a quality of life that they
Mhm.
had in the States,
Mhm.
which we all do to a certain degree. Don't get
Yeah.
me wrong. Like we
Yeah.
all love good internet, fast internet. We like
Yes.
to have the electricity on all the
Yes.
time. Those things, I'm not going
Yeah.
front.
No, we're
They're
not. We're
important,
not. We're not at
but
all.
at the same time, you do want to immerse yourself in the culture. You do want to try to assimilate, at least try to learn a language or make an attempt to learn a language and do different
Absolutely.
things to let people know that, hey, like, we're humble, we're guests,
We're guests here.
we're
Right.
trying to learn,
Right.
you
Right.
know. So
That's
yeah, all those things you're mentioning are very true.
yeah, and so that's
But
really
let's
sad.
stay on that though.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's
Yeah.
let's do that. Yeah, yeah. That's really sad though that that was my gosh, I'm 46. So like years ago when I left, right? That was a long time ago where we have that black and the white, the blacks, black Americans, whatever, not necessarily just putting that divide. But then you're there as well now. And it's still that sense of not recognizing and appreciating um, our roots and where we come from. Uh, and being there, I was never really a part of the people because I was Black American. But then coming to America, I was never really a part of the people because I really didn't understand and I wasn't intertwined in the culture. So it's like learning things all the time for the past 15 years. And that's why Georgia in itself is like my home, even though I wasn't born or raised here. I feel like, I've come to an adult of my liberation here. But staying in that same idea of a Black Americans going to the motherland and feeling like they have to stay in their same zone. It's that liberation, right? That lack of self and love, and that what is that inbreeding of the fact that we have to be of the white element, right? White is right. What all those things that come into play when we're talking about anti-racist work is that we're so ingrained in what is right, and how it should be done. Because even with the whole idea of the U.S. Embassy, that whole thing of even being in these spaces and what that does for a culture in itself. So it's just, yeah, people are definitely indoctrinated into what is supposed to be. And even when you look at the UN as well, there's a whole lot of dirt in there, United Nations and just the whole thing. So
There
we could
there,
go.
there is. There
Yeah,
is. There is.
there is. There is.
Uh Definitely not enough time to go through all that.
No,
Definitely not enough time.
no, we cannot dive into, yeah, it's a whole nother
and
ball game.
and I certainly can't dive into it because if I say anything that can be potentially
Yeah.
incriminating or
Yeah, no,
make
you're not, you're right. You
I
just,
can't. I'm
no,
no
you
in
can't.
no
Don't
position to
even,
do it. I gotta keep my
it's,
mouth shut because I want my wife to keep a job.
I
So
want her to keep I want her to keep her job. I want you to have you right, right. There's the thing, right? It's like, what do I do? What can I not say and say?
yeah.
But
So gotta
just moving
keep
with
it to
that
myself.
anti-racist,
Keep
right?
it to
Just keep
myself.
it with that
Yeah.
anti-racist work. I
So
remember, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. You were gonna say?
No, with the anti-racist work, I just remember even during the times we were there and having my mother encounter issues with white Americans, like bringing their ideas to a whole nation, right? A whole space of where it's all Black folks, but still bringing that entitlement to that area and feeling like they have that power over, which they did because they have the economic, power, as well as people talking to us a little differently, and even my father talking to him differently and saying, well, you're different from everyone else. And that's the same thing that they did in America. When my dad came as a Belizean, they divided and conquered, and tried to separate. However, my father wasn't having it. And I know I definitely get that attitude from my mom and my father, just not having it. Like, you're not about to be unfair and unjust and think that it's okay to degrade and put down my people. So yeah, but anyway, I know you have questions, and we'll stay on track because I could keep on going.
No, this is all good, and this is what's amazing about what's happening is that as you're saying these responses, you're actually answering some of the questions that I already had prepared. So we're on a good roll right now. So
Okay,
we're
good, good,
good.
good.
But just staying on your journey
Yeah.
living abroad. So
Yeah.
clearly living abroad did a lot to help shape your identity and your overall worldview as a Black
Yes.
woman.
Yes.
Now, when you finally returned to the States at 15 years old, after all those years abroad,
Yeah.
was it at that moment that you're aware of how racist
Mm, you
America
know,
is? Like, did it really open your eyes to just the differences between just being a young Black girl living abroad and then being a
right.
young Black girl living in the States?
Yeah, so I have some stories too on that, because like I said, living there, I was the American girl, right? Still Black, and had that influence, like, okay, I'm with my people kind of thing, but there was definitely a difference. But coming back to the States, we would come every year. And when I actually first had my racial awakening, and I realized that after my liberation journey, and when you're doing your liberation journey, you do digging into yourself. Because here I am, a Black woman, educated, doctorate, went to Spelman, and all these pieces, but there was some insecurities that were there. And when I was digging deeper into my racial awakening, I remembered a story that was so deep in me. Was when I was 6 or 7 years old, was when I was at Disneyland, and I was so excited to just see the princesses and all these things that clearly were not Princess Tiana. It was Cinderella. Um, and I ran up to her, and she immediately just put her hand out, held me back, and went and hugged these two white children. And at that age, that was when I really realized that, oh my gosh, there is a real difference, that people are still discriminating. Now, my mom had, somewhat told stories, but at that age, you're not really listening to those stories so deeply. But that was when I really figured out, like, oh, so there is discrimination, because it was a clear physical act of real violence, of just pushing a child away. And I still get emotional even speaking about something like that. But since then, and then coming back, I recognized that the difference between Black Americans and Black people that I've lived in within the Caribbean and in the continent of Africa, that there was a sense of confidence that people walked in, that because of seeing Black excellence all the time, there wasn't anything different. You always see Black lawyers, Black doctors, the prime ministers, political officials, all those things were Black. So there was a confidence that definitely people walked in, that was like no other. So coming back here, it was different. The motivation, it wasn't as much of what I saw and what I noticed, especially going into the education space, of seeing children not having that great motivation to be great. And to just aspire to things. So that was, a difference of going from the continent, Caribbean spaces, and coming back to the States. There was a gap that I saw, that I really wanted to try to instill in people, and understanding these, instill kids and children, and also teachers later on, that there's a greatness, and people could aspire to be whatever they wanted to be. So that
And
mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, just with your journey, being abroad, you had to have seen a lot of Black excellence out there.
Yeah,
You don't
yeah.
work for United Nations or work in
Right,
foreign service and not be excellent.
yeah, 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 yeah. My dad, coming up from where he came from, um, and being in a position of power and authority, and having that influence, that in itself. My mother being a teacher for me, she homeschooled, and so just all those pieces, and I didn't appreciate it back then. And then they tell me stories now. I'm like, really? Those people, like, it's just so not fully appreciating it when I was in that moment, but just taking it for granted. And then coming here and understanding that the kids aren't getting that access that they should have of what Blackness is, their roots, their ancestors. So that was a definite difference.
So you get exposed to Black excellence abroad. You come back to New York at 15,
Yeah,
go through
yeah,
your high school years, and then eventually you
yeah.
make your way down to ATL,
I do. I
right?
do. Yes, yes. Good old Spelman, right? Yeah, that was
Yes.
definitely a change. That was a
Now,
change. Mhm.
with Spellman, and I've never like one thing that if I could go back in time, and I appreciate the experience that I had at Temple University.
Oh,
Love my
wonderful.
alma mater,
Yes, yes, as you should.
but I'm not even gonna front. I get jealous when I see folks talk about their HBCU experience because it's like, man, like it's so mad. It sounds so magical. Like I
It,
feel like if I had gone to HBCU, I probably would have gone to either Howard or Hampton, like one of
yes.
the HUs. That's just me.
Right, right. Oh man, yeah. And HBCU is like no other. But I always tell my daughter, she says, well, I want to go to Spelman, but I want her to also go and be in a space where she feels comfortable and safe, and and however she feels. And I always say, well, I kind of want you to just be at HBCU first. Build up whatever it is you need to have, that support, that love. Um, that is instilled in you like no other. But I always tell her to look, you're Black enough. You'll be fine. You'll have the support. You'll be okay wherever you go. I would prefer an HBCU, but she's gonna, she wherever God has her, that's where she's going to be. And that's what I believe in. She has her roots are strong. She's grounded. And even though my son is also grounded, Morehouse has been wonderful for him. He's loving and he's enjoying it, and that's where he is. But every child is different, and they have their own journey. They have their own path that they need to go on, and I'm just excited to see what life brings them, and or what they bring to life. So I'm just excited about HBCUs. Spelman was different though, because here it is. I'm coming from a predominantly Black space where, of course, it's Black excellence, but then you have Black American excellence, and that conflict, that difference, where I'm coming in like, we need to be fighting for this and liberation. I just come from Zimbabwe too, like 2 or 3 years before, where they got
Mm,
their independence in 1980. So they still had that conflict of the Rhodesians and
yeah.
Blacks still, understanding that they're no, you're liberated now. You don't have to follow what these, Rhodesians are saying, because they still wanted to keep that name. But then coming to Spelman, I really had to find my niche. Like my first year, I enjoyed it, but it wasn't, I was like, Black Americans are different. Like, I had to really get used to priorities and some of the where I felt there was some superficial, behaviors. I was like, oh, okay. But I found my niche of people who, man, I would not trade it for the world. After my second and third and fourth, it just is amazing, and it's a bond like no other. But it took some getting used to of the different culture of anything else. But it's yeah, that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother journey and path that I am extremely grateful for.
Yeah, see, you're just speechless because there's just so much to say about it. But here's what I want to ask you.
Yeah.
What was the greatest lesson that Spelman taught you in your time there?
The greatest lesson. So I think looking back and being reflective, I think it is to walk in your truth as a Black woman, is to
Mm,
be yourself as a Black woman and not to take that part away or try to be anything else. The uplifting of being a Black woman in America or any other space is what has really driven me. And I think that's been the greatest lesson is to make sure. And I really didn't fully, like I said, appreciate it until my older age. Like, oh yeah, they were, because you're worried about making friends and parties and all these things. I really didn't grasp a lot of the realness, but Spelman really taught me subconsciously that I could walk in myself and not be afraid, and that I have a tribe behind me, that could encourage and support me throughout. So that that has definitely been one of my top lessons of being there, and that's why I would love it for my kids, for my daughter.
that's what's up. That's what's up.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, you spend all that time in Spelman, and at some point, you decide, okay, I want to get into education. So, what ultimately got you into the field? What drew you to this wonderful profession that we all love?
Yes, that we so dearly love. That interesting relationship, right? So
Yeah.
initially, when I went to school, I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to be, a civil rights lawyer. I wanted to be an activist, but I was guided down a path of education. My granny Kate, my mom, my dad's mother, she was actually robbed of her childhood, actually taken away from her home at around 2 years old and forced to work for another family at a very young age. And she actually wanted to be a teacher. Then my mother, a natural teacher, taught my sister and I and homeschooled us when we were in Angola. But education just was clearly in my blood. It was something that I was passionate about. And because of my experiences and because of some of the things I saw when I was living abroad, that was just in my subconscious, I said, I want to bring that to children. I had this, I don't know if it was this savior kind of mode, or it was just like, look, I'm Black, you're Black. I want to share and love on you and give you all the things that I feel like you needed. And so that was how I stepped into education. And of course, all the difficulties that come with that, because we're not a monolith. Here I am coming into a classroom, thinking, oh, we're automatically going to connect because I'm Black. But that also was not the case, right? Because I'm coming from a different culture, a different set of expectations, or not a set of expectations, but on how to get there, and not fully understanding that there are things that these babies needed more of than me telling them what they can be. They needed like the full support of then and now. And so later on in the years, that's what I figured out. And that's how I really got into education too, even deeper into education. That ran deep for me. Like, what can I do for these babies in a long term? That so that they could really truly see that they are the future, of change and creating change. So over time, because as you know, people move in and out of education, right? It just developed, and my journey as it moved on and as experiences happened, my teaching shifted. Before, it was in that set zone. Okay, here
Mhm.
are the standards, here's what we need to do and get them through. But then of course it had to change. I think one of the biggest change for me was Trayvon Martin, when he was murdered. And my son was in fourth grade and my daughter was in second grade. And so that was the pivotal moment. And I know I'm running into, I think that when we talk about anti-racist work, that was a pivotal moment of how my ideas and theory on education really shifted into a more of pushing our babies to be change agents, so that they can have hope
Mhm.
and so that they could be filled with a sense of purpose, for themselves and for others. So, but I could roll into that. I don't know if you have another question in regards to that, but that was one of my things in getting into education.
Yeah, I mean, I got so many, but since we're on this train of thought, so
Yeah.
clearly you're very outspoken individual. You're you're not afraid to speak up about issues that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
I just wonder, and I know this was the case for me. Like I wasn't always the person that you see me as today.
Oh,
So I'm wondering for you, when you first entered the education space, were you coming into the space just calling everything out, just speaking your mind, walking your truth? Or was that an evolution? Was that a journey for you
yeah.
to get
Yeah.
to the place where you are right now, where you were just all about self love, all about liberation, all these different themes that we're discussing right now? So, what was that evolution for you?
Man, that's such a good question because it's such like when when I think about it, I've always been very much in my blackness, walking in that and very strong. However, being vocal and naming it, I don't think I was as intentional in naming those things because I didn't even realize how much liberation that I needed of myself, right? That I needed to
Wow.
have a deeper sense of self love, and unlearning that I had to do. Because in the beginning, it was more like, okay, here are the standards. We need to pass these tests because this is what we're supposed to do, in the system, right? And doing those things in the system of what we're being told. However, I was never shied away of my blackness, natural hairstyle I was rocking even when it wasn't popular. Like my dashikis, I was wearing it in college. I never shied away from that at all. Um, but when it came to a shift, it was definitely during the incident of Trayvon Martin. My that was my children's first protest that they went to right here in Atlanta at CAU, actually at Club Whittier, Woodruff Library is what is officially called, where we started off there and we marched through. And from there, unfortunately, I did see a shift even in my babies, a sense of, anxiety and fear because this was their first time witnessing like someone was killed unjustly. I've heard about it. Everyone else, as an adult, we know about it. But it hit a little differently when my babies had that direct impact and I saw it in them daily, 24/7. Um, that's when I think my voice on injustices really started to formulate. And that's when my curriculum really changed in okay, so how can you do better? How can we start analyzing situations in a little deeper way, so that you could be a change agent for yourself and others. And so that's when I started formulating, even when I'm going to bring up my book, those paths, those concepts ran deeply throughout my curriculum, so that kids could start taking ownership or of their actions and being given tools on how they can change, for their personal, social, and eventually professional, academic, lives as well. So no, I wasn't always that person who was like, "That's wrong. That's racist." I would more like, "That's unjust," maybe, but it was never to the point, of where I am now. But it's for the past 4 or 5 years when I had the youth, organization, Creative Community. That was the whole basis, was building up youth so that they could be change agents, and being very vocal in the fact that no, they can do something. And I always taught my children, look, even if you're the only person, one person standing up and everyone is against you, you do what's right. You don't do it for the accolades. You do what's right. No one else may agree with you. And the person who you're defending might go against you. But if you think it's right, and because something was unjust, you stand up. You stand up for it. So that's just been me. That's been my father too, and my mom. So definitely influenced.
So you did mention your new book,
Yes, I'm so
which
excited.
it just released, or
Yes, yes. So just released. You could do the pre-orders, but I got my the first, you get your first 50 copies in, and I was just like, let me keep it humble. I'm gonna do 50 copies and see what happens
oh, got
after
your
that.
proofs. That's what's up.
Exactly. Like I got that part. And it's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble now for pre-sale. But yeah, that book was a journey. I've been writing it forever and just recreating it and redefining it. And it's not necessarily only for educators, but it's for all people who are looking to, and it ties into my Beyond Free, right? The Beyond Free came about was people just going beyond even the concept and the idea of what free is, right? Because you have that freedom or
Mhm.
that free state, but then you get stuck in that state still. But I want people to think beyond the concept, like just to be. And that's why that whole thing of Beyond Free came about, is being able to bring in people to have brave conversations um, about breaking down systems of oppression and how we're going to do that. Because we're going to have conversations, but then we're going to have some actionable steps to do that. And not actionable where we're, always going to the hill or making policy changes, but personal action steps as well. Because you could go out there and breaking down, but you yourself aren't quite what is it, broken down to be built up again, right? You're not unlearning all those
Yeah.
pieces, because as we know with the civil rights movement, right, it was great, it was wonderful, we got the right to vote. However, black women were put to the back burner, right? The LGBTQ community was put to the back burner for the sake
Hmm.
of what it looks like, because people were so concerned about perceptions, right? What it could, but we hurt groups of people, we oppressed groups of people for the sake of the whole people. So that's a whole nother thing about in the book too, is what is your journey? What are you doing and fighting for? Is it true just to, a certain group, or is it true to everyone? And so when we're on this liberation, because, as we know, the Black Lives Matter, and when we have all these pieces, and you speak on it too with LGBTQ people, like we can't be talking about Black lives, but we're leaving out LGBTQ community. That's just not, because of our homophobic ways and ideas of Christianity and what that is, that westernized view. It's just, that's a whole nother thing. But that's
Yeah.
that, but that's just my thing. It's like, you have to dig deep into yourself. You have to dig deep into those traditions that you were raised to think were okay, all the wordings, all the phrases, all these things that you thought were okay, and start being okay with saying, no, that's offensive, and put it out there and putting an end. So with the book, it's a journal, but it's a journal with my stories in it. It's guiding you through these four paths, and you could go through however you want to go through it. But it provides activities, because I'm an educator too. I have to have that actionable thing, where you're writing and you're doing things. I have meditations that my good friend wrote for me. There are meditations in there, because a part of being a part of this process of liberating for yourself and others is making sure that you have contemplative practices for yourself, because you could absorb all this hate and oppression, and it gets so
Yes.
weighing, it weighs you down, it, because we talk about this, we see, we're interacting, and it's just exhausting. But in the book, I ask that you please set aside times for meditation, things that you could do for self-love, things of practicing with, because once you're starting to unlearn some things, it's painful. It's painful because you're going to start to see things in people who you love dearly that it's harmful. And so you have to put things in place, even getting a counselor, accountability partners, people who are on this journey together. And if you don't have that, then you find small things that you do on your own to restore yourself. So yeah, that's the book. That's the book to, to just get people on the path of liberating themselves, and then steps to how they could to put it in action. Like, now you've done all this work, what can you do for society on a whole? Because I don't believe in just your personal liberation, because that's not really liberated when you're not liberating and helping others, in my opinion. That's just my thing, where if I'm not uplifting you, then this is a problem. I have to share out, but I also have to make sure I'm liberating myself first, from learned
Yeah.
behaviors, toxic behaviors.
So as you're describing, the name of the book is My Freedom Journey, y'all. In case we didn't
Yes.
give y'all the title,
Yes.
My Freedom Journey. Don't worry, I'm gonna help you plug this book now.
Yes. Thank
So
you.
if people
I'm
gonna
like,
buy this book, I'm gonna help you out. But
I got it. I
I
got it.
know that I know that you did your doctoral work in Columbia, and as you're talking about My Freedom Journey and you're describing it, it sounds very familiar. It sounds like another Columbia professor that we both know about, and Dr. Yolanda Celia Ruiz, when we talk about the archaeology of the self. It
Yeah.
sounds very archaeology of the self-ish, right?
Yes. Yes. That's
The
right.
deep diving, the
Mhm.
excavations,
You have to.
get into stories.
Yes, you have to.
Like,
And
I see it.
right? And that was my whole dissertation was family stories. Like, I had to dive deep into myself. I had to, like, why am I like this? My kids, I'm so impatient. My daughter had to school me on some things when she was like 3 or 4 years old. I had to figure out, like, why am I like this? What's going on where I feel always tense? And so I dived deep into my father's stories, and how that connected with me, and how I behaved and interacted and my passions. So, yes, absolutely. It is something that we all have to take on. And it sounds just so simple. But over the past 4 or 5 years, I had to do some healing. I had to do some serious healing, because I'm just newly divorced. And so having over almost 20 years of being in a marriage, and it's nothing to indictment on him or anything, but it was how I did not heal properly for myself. And I had an image of what it was to be like to be a wife, or what it's to be like a mother. So I put that out there to say that you have to start working on yourself, before embarking or even engaging. Well, you can embark and engage with people, but I think it's an awareness of self, that you're not perfect, that there's some unlearning that you have to do, in order for you to fully engage the way you're supposed to. Because this has taken years for me, and I'm still working. Because what, it's 400 years of unlearning that we have to do, right? That's ingrained,
Oh
it's in our
yeah.
DNA. So we have
Yes.
to, right, really have to push for that. But yeah, that's a part of my journey. That's a part of what we have to do, the work that we have to do.
Yeah. I know for me personally, therapy played a huge role and still plays a huge role in that.
Yes.
I started going to therapy while I was in Ethiopia
Yeah.
because
Oh,
I was dealing with just issues with transition,
yes.
issues
Yes.
with finding a job as a trailing spouse, adjusting to a country where English is rarely spoken.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
All those
like dealing with
pieces.
all these transitions just played a role in my growing anxiety. And it just got to a point where it was just like, all right, I need to talk to somebody, because if I try to talk to my wife about it,
Yeah.
either we start to argue, or I get upset, I get easily
Right.
irritated, and then it's like
Right.
I don't want to talk to anybody. So let me find a neutral party who I can talk to about these
Yeah.
issues, so I can just unleash, unpack, and just
Yes.
get it out. And it's been something that has been very helpful for me, because not only
Mhm.
did it help with the just how to deal with the transitioning, especially during COVID, because we've been back and forth between Ethiopia and the States over the
Wow.
past 2.5 years,
Wow.
and it's just played a huge role in everything. But it's also allowed me to just explore some of my tendencies and just my
Mhm.
behaviors and
Mhm.
how I think about different things, because it stems back to my upbringing. It stems back to just my relationship with my father, which is very much estranged, right? And still is, but I'm trying to get to a point where I could actually call him on the phone and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" But I'm just not there yet. But I'm
Yeah.
hoping that in the near future I will be.
Yeah.
Um, just seeing how my mom was able to raise all of us, and she was
Wow.
barely making 30,000 a year
Wow.
working at a bank for 3 decades. You
Wow.
know, before getting laid off, but she found a way to get all three of her siblings through all three of her children through college.
Wow.
I don't know how she did it.
Yeah, I don't know how that
Um,
that
but she found a way. But all
wow.
these things that I'm mentioning, I was able to unpack that with therapy. And now
Mhm.
with my freedom journey with this book, people have an opportunity to do that unpacking,
Yes.
but also supplement it with some other things that are going to
Yes.
get them to a place where they can
Yes.
get that radical self-love and
Yes,
really just
calming.
be in position mentally and
Yes.
physically to do the work. Yeah.
Yes. I love how you plug that. You did awesome. You did Yes, that's exactly right, because we have to have that. We have to have that extra, that added on,
Yeah.
and I ask you that in the book is to make sure you start building up your tribe, your people, and if you don't, do something else. Like you need to have something there for you to make sure that you are loving on yourself, because that's something for myself too. I have to, it's something kind of like, okay, Melanie, love on yourself, because I'm so used to being a mother, that I've had to kind of separate, like, no, I need to love myself more so that I'm able to be the mom that I need to be, the sister, the daughter that I need to be. And so coming into myself of who I am and finding myself again was very important. And in this book, writing the book alone released a lot. I had to delete a whole lot, put a whole lot, and just revamp. But it was extremely healing and liberating to even get to that point, to even write it and then release it. So a little scared and a little excited all at the same time. Just to share a little bit of myself and my thoughts and ideas around liberation and what that means for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think when I look back at the anxiety that I was experiencing,
Hmm.
um, I think it just came from the fact that I'd been an educator, a classroom teacher for 14 years straight.
Yes.
I knew every August or September I'll be in a new classroom with a new group of students. I knew a curriculum I was going to teach.
Yeah.
I knew that
Yeah.
I'll be doing it from August, September, all the way through to June. And I
Right.
did that for 14 consecutive years. And then all of a
Wow.
sudden, y- you're uprooted from that job. You're in a new country
Oh, yeah.
where, as you mentioned earlier, you're a diplomat. You
Right.
have a whole staff of people. You have a housekeeper, you have a nanny, you have a
You
driver, you have
do.
a gardener,
I wasn't even gonna
you have
mention that because my kids
everybody
make fun of
doing
me.
you have
Right.
everybody doing the chores that you used to do
Right.
when you were here in the States. Now it's like I have nothing to do. And and honestly, the anxiety that I was growing from not being in the classroom, the separation anxiety that I was
Yeah.
experiencing,
Wow.
that's what propelled me to start this podcast. That's why
Wow.
this podcast started, because I
Wow. To
needed to
connect.
find a way to
Yes.
connect with
Yes.
educators if I couldn't be in a classroom teaching children, I needed to talk to educators. And quite frankly, it kind
You
of
did a
spilled into
great
social
job,
media as
man.
well, because before that, I wasn't really active on Instagram like that, nor my
No.
other social media
Yeah.
platforms. It wasn't until I got to Ethiopia where I really started to ramp up on the activity because I had
Yeah.
time. I had time to talk to people. I had
Yeah.
time to do
Yes.
lives. I had time to tweet and just empty out my
Man.
thoughts because
Yeah.
I didn't really have other people to talk to
Well, I'm
abroad.
grateful because you
Yeah,
you you come with it, man. Your articles and all of the things and all you're like, wow, how does he come up with all this stuff? I'm just in awe. So yeah, you're doing it.
yeah.
You're
And
brilliant.
honestly, more, and it's allowed me the time away from the classroom to do the unlearning
Yes.
and to relearn some things and to really be uh retrospective about my own instructional practice over the years and how
Yeah.
I could have done better in certain areas,
Yeah.
like because when you're on the go for 14 consecutive years,
Yeah.
like, okay, you teach one class on to the next.
Yeah.
You go through
Right.
summer, your curriculum mapping, you're developing a scope of sequence.
Right.
You're scouting your students, you're getting a sense of who they are. You go through that cycle for those years, and then all of a sudden, you don't have to do that anymore. And it's like, what do you
Like,
do
wait a minute.
now? But now my point is coming back. That was my role.
Right.
That's how I identified myself
Wow.
as just this person. So once that role was taken away from me, I had to figure out who I was now.
Wow.
I had to figure out who I was as a husband, as a father,
Yeah.
all these other
Yeah.
roles that for years were just secondary.
Right.
And now I have to elevate them and really make those a priority because, when you're teaching, you're spending all these hours and, draining, like just giving all your energy
Yes.
to
Yes.
others who are not even your blood, right?
Right. Not even. And
Yeah. So I'm wondering for
that's
you,
it. Yeah.
because you were mentioning, because you had mentioned, divorce, and I know
Mm.
for I have other friends who have gone through divorce, and
Yeah.
I know for some of them it was because they lost themselves in the
Mm.
marriage,
Yeah.
and then once they
Yeah.
finally got out of the marriage, it was like, okay, now I have the headspace to process certain things. I had the headspace to really think about how I want to orient myself and show up in the world. So I'm wondering if you had that awakening after all those years of just being in the role of, being a wife,
Yeah.
being a caregiver, being a mother.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely do think it had that there. And I don't want to put in this frame of liberation, of like from marriage and all of that. I think
Right.
we got married young, 23, I want to say. So, fairly young, where I feel like we hadn't fully developed, right? We really didn't
Mhm.
understand what it meant to be in a marriage in itself, and just over the years, um, me losing myself, me conforming to a role, even though, he never was like, oh, you need to do this, you need to cook. And cause I don't really love to cook, but, being a mother, and that whole role of what a black mother looks like, what a mother looks like, period. I think I automatically try to fill that role. And there were some other issues within our marriage that came up later, but that really just kind of like, okay, this is not happening. We can't move forward anymore, in this space. But definitely there was liberation, um, in discovering myself, and relearning like, oh my god, I do like doing that, and being free to be myself, even though I feel like that was put on myself to to fit a certain type, But yeah, to answer your question, it did give me that space. It did give me that freedom to just really think. And then also moving out of the classroom, also, because we were talking about classroom being and having that regimen, right? But also being a space of a little bit more of leadership and administration. I was able to not
Right.
have to have the burden of classroom, students and all of that in order to start liberating and start mapping out ways in which teachers could start pushing for liberation and freedom. So it was like a twofold thing. It was liberation and understanding and unpacking of myself after divorce or, during our separation. And then as well as my role within the school and education environment. So there were quite a few parts on my journey of liberation and freedom, and which I'm still on that journey. I'm still on that path. Um, and I still call on my people in my village to help me out when I'm like, what in the whole world is going on, which is always needed. Is always needed. That's a good question. That is a good question.
Yeah.
That's yeah, yeah.
Now,
Whole
staying
nother.
on radical self love.
Yes.
I know this is something that Sonia Renee Taylor talks about. Um, and for those who don't know, Sonia Renee Taylor,
Yeah, I don't.
y'all need to check her out.
I
So
will
she has a
definitely.
book called My
So.
Body Is Not an Apology.
Mm,
So she does a lot of talk around disability justice and body positivity, body
okay.
inclusivity. Um, yeah, very incredible mind, incredible mind.
I'm gonna
You
have
have
to
to
look it
check
up.
out her TED talk, and
Absolutely.
I'll share that link with you.
Please, please.
But
I love
she
it.
talks a lot about calling on,
Yeah.
um, calling on folks to do the work, right? Whereas
Mhm.
with Loretta Ross talks about calling in. So we hear about calling
Mm.
in
Yeah.
people, trying
Yes.
to educate them about the harm that they're imposing on others.
Yeah. Yeah.
But Sonia Renee Taylor talks about the importance of calling on. So when you call on people, you're putting the onus on them to do the
Oh,
work as
wow.
opposed to you doing the work for them.
Yeah.
You see what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, and I think that requires radical love because if you really love somebody radically,
Yeah, you wouldn't. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
like you're looking in their best interest,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And sometimes that radical love could be tough love. So,
Mhm.
what role does that play in helping educators develop culturally responsive, anti-bias, anti-racist practices, but also building their capacity in racial
Mhm.
literacy? Because as you mentioned, it wasn't until you went through your journey that you started to really
Yeah.
connect the dots
Yeah.
about your identity and
Yeah.
just how you view the world through that lens. So if you could talk to us about that.
Yeah, radical self-love is so when we speak of radical self-love, I think it's a major shift, right? It's a change that is so intentional. Um, and it can be visibly seen by all people because it's a shift in how you behave and how you move and your behaviors and ideologies. And that love is where you are living your authentic self, and you are able to recognize certain boundaries that you need to set up. You are recognizing that there are certain triggers in your life that you don't want to have anymore. And even in my book, I put that down. That's one of those trigger checks. Like, what triggers you? What are your moods that changes, right? Making sure that you are doing that. As a routine, because once you set up those boundaries of what you can and cannot do, that's love. That's loving yourself. Not doing it because other people say you should do it. It's tradition. It's all those things. But you setting up those things and saying, no, this is what I cannot do. This is something that makes me feel uncomfortable. and making sure that you are pushing on, just like what Kwame was saying, right? You're not being the one who's always teaching people about what's wrong and things that they need to unlearn, but you're putting it on them to figure it out, because there are certain triggers that can occur when you're rehashing these stories that are disturbing or that are traumatic. So having that radical self-love of yourself and understanding those pieces is important, because as you're stepping into the work of anti-racist work, you have to be able to um, identify those triggers, put contemplative practices in place and how to deal with those, because being an anti-racist worker, you're going to be addressing issues that may trigger you. So making sure that you have some practices in place that are consistently um, elevating yourself, providing healing for yourself, so that you are also able to consistently do the work of anti-racist work, building curriculum around culturally relevant curriculum. Because once you know about yourself and who you are, you could easily start pouring into others as well, and recognizing all the different curriculum pieces that are attached to culturally relevant curriculum. And then eventually, even loving people the way you're truly supposed to love them. To call them out. What I love is like to call people out, because you know you have compassion, right? And then there's self-compassion too.
Yes.
So you could call people out, you know, to really draw them in. And it's not to draw them in to teach them about things, but it's to call them out to say, no, you need to do the work, and be ready for that, especially when you are anti-racist educator. Uh, there's love in it too, even though for those people who have come across who are a little, you know, conflicting and want to just believe that there's, you know, we only have to, you know, fight everything with real love and I don't see color. And it's just like, okay, no, we there's real work that has to be done, you know. I could, you
Yeah.
know, love you, but there's real work that needs to be done when we're talking about radical self-love and radical love.
Yes, there is. So much to do. So much to
So
do
much to
still.
do.
So
So
much to
much to
do.
do. So much to talk about. But it's a journey. And we're here to just keep on encouraging people to make that change, because that's what I do this work for. It's for future generations. It's just, it's important. It's
I
important for our
mean,
future.
it has to be that way because who knows when we're going to see true liberation
Oh my
in
gosh.
our lifetime?
Yeah,
Who knows if we're
yeah,
going to be realistic?
yeah. No, as we,
So
you
we got
know,
to set our
just
babies up.
no, right. We got to set them up as we have just the Kyle Rittenhouse, you know, verdict and that ridiculousness. You know, it's just, yeah, we got to set them up. We got to give them the tools um, needed for them to be liberated. I already see it in my kids, you know, my daughter. I think that that generation, the Gen Zers, they are, you know, they are ready. They're fierce. But you know, we have to give them the right tools, or actually they give us the right tools too. We learn from them, right, as well, on what we need to do, because last year too, the millennials, you all, and the you know, all the protests, the racial awakening that we, you know, that a lot of white people had, um it was, they, we're ready, they're ready, they're ready for that liberation, and that's what we're here for, to 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 just be a part of that
Yeah,
journey.
for sure. For sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we are at the hour.
I
So
know
we're
we
going to start.
are.
Yeah.
We
But
are.
see, this is what happens when we get into good conversation.
I
Time just be flying.
know. Could keep on going. I could keep on going. This is great. I
Yes.
thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
All right. So we're going to wrap things up with the lightning round. So we do
Oh
have
Lord,
some
let
bonus
me.
questions, some quick hitters, just so that people can get to know you
Sure,
outside of
sure.
this radical space
Yes,
that
yes.
we're in. So since we're talking about radical self-love, give me an activity that you do to exercise radical self-love. Your go-to.
Oh yes, hiking, nature. I love being in nature. Yeah, anything outside, I enjoy. I do enjoy.
All right, that's what's up. Um, what's the highest mountain or park where you had to do a hike?
Oh Lord. I do love now. I haven't traveled as high. Golly, that's Kennesaw State Mountain Park, like here in Georgia. That because I
Okay.
like camping and things like that. So yeah, I am that person who likes camping. Now, there's levels of camping, but there's I do like camping. So
You hardcore. So are you the type that actually
I'm not
you put
hardcore.
the tent together? You're out in the woods. You in a
I am
tent,
in
or
the
you in
woods,
like a
but
you in a luxury? You in one of those
no,
luxury
I am in
camps
the
where?
woods. I am a tent, right? I do have a tent, and but I don't do it like it's just one family that is camping, right? We have to have like a community. I don't believe in like one black person family in the hood. Like I would not go out hiking like bye, I'm going for hiking by my no, I'm not. I'm not that black person. I'm not. I'm not. I yeah, no. No,
All
not that.
right,
Yes, but I
all
do love
right,
nature.
all right. To each his own.
To
To
each
each
his
its
own
own.
indeed.
I know for me, I'm a luxury camp person. I can't really do the
Are you?
real tent, sleeping there overnight. I get irritated by the bugs.
Do you
That
really?
that os that osprey will run out real quick if it's just me. That osprey is gonna be gone.
Like kill yourself with that off spray. Jeez,
Telling you, people
Lord,
gonna
that
be mad at
smell.
me.
I know, like, oh my gosh. Yeah, right.
All right. Um, other than your book, is
Yes.
there another book that you're currently reading or plan to read in the foreseeable future?
So I have a book that I read was I read and reread it is My Grandmother's Hands. And I forgot his last name, Mensa, and I have it right over there. But his last name is I believe it's Mensa. Have you heard of it? My Grandmother's Hands. It's a
Oh,
beautiful
Resma.
Resma. Thank you. Oh my gosh, Resma.
Oh
Thank you.
yeah.
I love that book. Oh my gosh. But then on the other end, I'm reading Children of Blood and Bones. Have you read that?
By
Yeah,
what's her
you would
name?
know the author.
Tony. She's like Nigerian.
Yes, I think so. And
author.
it's a fictional book. Yeah, you're good at this. Yeah,
I've not read the book, but I definitely know of the book.
that's what I'm reading. Yeah.
Yeah. But my wife did read my mother's
Grandmother's
hands,
Hands.
and
Yes.
she actually attended the actual training
Wow.
with Resma.
Wow.
She actually did that.
Oh man. Yeah, he's like one of my
Yeah.
persons like, oh my God, I would love to meet you. That would be amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that book is
Yeah.
that's deep. It's a deep book.
Yeah, she enjoyed it as well. Definitely a good book.
Yes.
All right. Favorite movie of all time. What do you
I
got?
d- I don't have one. I do not
Okay.
have a favorite. No, I love all types. Like, okay, I don't even have a favorite color. It's like whatever's my mood, that's the like it's I don't have a movie of all time. I have some movies, but I don't have one movie
All right.
of
Let me
all.
remix that then. What is a movie that you would watch if you really need a good laugh?
Oh, oh shoot. A good laugh? That's very specific. Um, what movie would I watch if I wanted a good laugh? What Friday. Friday. Yeah,
Can't go wrong with that.
yeah, that's like classic. That's classic. Like, yeah, that's yeah. That's one.
All right, cool. All right.
But I'm more of like an action person, like zombies. Like I love I Am Legend. Yeah, it's just yeah, I'm that person too.
Okay. Yeah, shout out to Will Smith. We actually,
You're good
my
at
wife
this.
and I started actually listening to his book.
Oh, I haven't listened to it. Okay, okay.
I
Nice. Is it
mean,
good?
he's narrating it, and if you know Will Smith, he's a pretty good storyteller. Like he's very
Yeah, he is.
animated, and
Yeah, I can imagine.
I mean, he's an actor, so
Yeah, absolutely.
you can only imagine how he narrates the story. It's pretty
Eh,
good so far.
okay, good. Okay, yeah, him
Yeah, it was
narrating
pretty
it, yeah,
good.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, it wouldn't work if it was anybody else. I'll
No,
just say that.
you're like, not so much. That's a
It had
lot
to
with
be him.
scripts too, right? Like with scripts, you're like, that would have been an awful movie if it wasn't for, you know, the people, the actors.
Yeah, for sure. All right. You're at dinner and you can invite three influential figures, dead or alive. Who will they be?
Yes. So Audre Lorde, I would love her, and her wisdom. Brian Stevenson, he's a social justice. I don't know if yes, Just Mercy. That's like, oh my God, I love the book. The book is amazing. And have you visited the Legacy Museum or the Lynching Memorial here in Alabama?
Alabama?
Yes.
No.
Yes. Ooh, man, that's when y'all come down to Georgia or go into yeah, that'll be a whole thing. And the last person would be my granny, Kate. That's my dad's mother. I would love to. She died when she was young, when I was young, excuse me. So I never really got to know her just from my father. And I would love to hear her stories. I would, yeah, just love to sit down and just talk to her about her journey and being a single mother in Belize and, having children and all of those things and not being able to do what she wanted to do. So yeah, that would be the three people.
All right. Three words to describe your 2021.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so challenging, inspiring, and freeing.
Mm.
Yeah.
And now, three words to describe your 2022.
Okay, so intentionality, love, and connection.
Boom. And there you have it, y'all. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Melanie Dukes. Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.
Oh, thank
Thank you for coming
you.
on.
Thank you for having me. This was fun. I really appreciate it. And you said it. You're like, we're just gonna come and hang out and be chill. That was great. I appreciate
Yeah,
you. Thank you
nothing,
so much.
nothing serious. Nothing
Yeah.
serious. Just chatting about education and life. It's as
Ah,
simple as that. You know how it is.
absolutely. I do know. I do know. Thank you so much again for having me. I'm so humbled and excited to be on your show.
And then before you sign off, if you could let folks know how they can connect with you on social media, but
Yeah.
also purchase My Freedom Journey, the new book that is now out
Yes.
on Amazon, Barnes and Noble,
Yes.
and all
Yes.
other book retailers out there. Let
Yes,
them
it
know.
is. Okay, so you could go on my website as well, which is www.beyondfreellc.com, to purchase a book, or you could go on. I have my IG, which is Mad Dukes, or they say Ma Dukes, MADDUKES is my IG, and the book is on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, and you could just research on there. My Freedom Journey: Be Free, Be Brave, and Be Radical. Thank you.
All right,
I
there you have it,
appreciate you.
y'all. Make
Thank you
sure
so
y'all
much.
purchase that book. No, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Really
Um,
appreciate it. I
yes,
love
blessed to have you on here. So
same here.
if we don't connect again before this new year, I wish you a good rest of 2021. Hope you
Thank
have a
you.
wonderful time with family.
Yes.
And
Yes.
congratulations again on the release of your book as someone
Thank you.
that has written books.
I know you write all the time.
I
Like
know
you're just a
I
writer.
know how grueling the process is. It's grueling. So I commend anybody that goes through that process and
No, thank
finds
you.
the finish line.
Thank you so much, Kwame. I appreciate you. I appreciate all the encouragement and the support.
Yes, for sure. So until next time,
Yes.
all right, you have a good
Next time.
night.
Thank you. You too.
All
Thank you
right.
again.
All right, people. So we're about to conclude another wonderful episode of Identity Talk Educators Live. We still have 1 or 2 more episodes before we close 2021. But if we don't get to see each other before then, as I always tell you all, I'm wishing you all a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good night wherever you are in the world. And we are going to do this again another time. Peace out, everybody.